Release the legs down. Release the arms away from the spine, away from the skull. Down. Spine, ribs, trunk, up. Join your palms. Draw yourself in the place where this yogic experience is occurring, is inside you. So set that place correctly for this practice. Pay homage to yoga and to its root teacher, Patanjali. Bow your head to your heart. Release your hands. Slowly raise your head. Open your eyes. Stretch your legs. Spreading those toes. Pushing the outer foot outward. Physically spread it outward. Come all the way to the heel. Spread the heel outward. From your knees, here's the knee, lower knee, upper knee. From the top of the knee, push outward toward inner heel, in your ankle, in your heel, and big toe base joint. Push. Don't push from the groin. Locate the knee. Push from the knee. Spread the outer foot. The more you spread the outer foot, the more the outer calf activates. Cut the outer calf in as if you wanted to physically squeeze your calves, shin bones together. From the outer calf, compact. And from that top knee, stretch. Do not only compact. If all you do is squeeze, it'll get unpleasant. It'll go contrary to what we want. You've got to bring that outer calf in and stretch the inner leg all the way to the heel, all the way to the toes. Now, this top thigh, outer thigh, right where the femur bone is, if you dig in, your femur bone starts at the center of the knee, but it comes outward to the hip socket. There's a diagonal, so you'll feel the bone here. Pull it to the socket and push that socket down. So this is several actions, all synchronizing, coordinating to help you stretch, fully extend the leg, spread the toes, stretch the inner knee, compact the outer calf, and make that, you might say, a complete circuit. inner leg, spread the foot, outer calf. Pull that up to the thigh. Compact the outer thigh to the hip socket. Sit it down. And from that compaction, it's not the groin that's pushing. It's everything else. Hamstring to the, let's see, buttock bone to hamstring to heel. Okay. Relax. Take the legs wide apart, sitting on whatever support you like, including nothing. Could be flat on the floor if your flexibility is there. Just to illustrate, the idea is this leg needs to be straight. You don't want airspace under that leg if you were sitting on the floor. So with the legs apart, gather up these actions, these previous actions. From the inner knee, stretch to the inner foot, spread the foot to the outer foot, tuck back to the outer calf, engage that outer calf to stretch the inner, and follow up to the outer hip socket. Move the buttock bones toward the hamstrings, lifting the chest. Keep these inner thighs, these groins should not roll toward the ceiling. This inner thigh should stay vertical. Outer thigh vertical. Two sides of the knee vertical. Two sides of the foot vertical. Inner calf, spread the knee, tuck the outer calf in, activate that outer calf. Tuck to the outer hip socket, not rolling the leg. Now sit down with those buttock bones and stretch them toward your feet. Turn to the right. Keep that outer left, outer right thigh, both of them firm. Lift your trunk. Now brace with the back arm. Raise your front arm. Left arm. Stretch as tall as you can from the left hip socket through that left side buttock, back buttock, side buttock. This whole buttock structure has to lengthen down and up. Come through the waist end, lumbar spine, rib cage, stay close to the spine. Now you can take this hand down and turn more if you like, if you can. Keep that height, keep that length of the buttock. Do not neglect your right leg. Rebuild the activity of the leg you're turning toward. Make sure the right buttock is also long. Come out. So when you come out, if you held your pose right, there you won't have to fix your pelvis to be square again. If you need to fix your pelvis, please do. Don't don't ignore it. Okay, so reestablish the actions and knee quite firmly. The dull leg has to wake up. The dull hip has to wake up the dull inner knee. Whatever's dull, wake it up. Now, another thing to mention is this heel needs to stay down on the floor. There's a downward grounding, not just at the hip socket. Okay. Pull up through the trunk, begin the turn, supported with both hands. It's easy to neglect the leg you're turned away from, but it's also easy to just be complacent about the leg you're turning toward because you're working hard here, so you sort of forget about the other side. Keep both outer thighs pinned into the sockets. Inner leg stretching, outer calf absolutely engaged to that shin. Stretch the inner knee. Keep the groins vertical. Don't push or pressurize the groins. Work everywhere else. The groin receives this. Pull up through the trunk, lengthening both buttocks, but especially the right one. Take your right arm up. Brace with the left side where needed and go to work again. Put that right hip socket down. Let that buttock muscle go. Use the thigh. Lengthen the buttock. Release the lumbar. Stay close to the spine in this extension. And then the arm comes down and takes whatever support. It can cross to the outer knee if all of you is doing that. Don't just be a shoulder reaching around. Keep that right buttock grounded. Right and left leg straight. Now, come out. Okay. Phew. Bend your knees now in the rolling, this whole surface, inner surface, that up till now has been perpendicular to the floor. It's now gonna turn parallel to the floor. This thigh, this groin has to turn. That means everything else has to turn. This thigh pulling into its hip socket has to be allowed to roll down and tuck in. So from Upavishta Konasana, you're actually using your hands to keep the actions correct. Turn that shin. You're not just using your hands, but you're doing what you were doing here. Outer calf in, inner leg stretching, outer thigh tucking, is just continuing tucking. Now, what you're adding is external rotation, but those original extensions do not change. You might need support under your hips. I didn't mention this. Okay, you're going to come in this super careful way, halfway to Baddha Konasana, halfway. So without a doubt, even if your knees are up in the air, you have a very clear rotation. Now, as hard as I was wishing for you to work on this outer calf, cutting in these poses, you now have to really do it here because that's what lifts your heel. So for those very stiff in the hips, I'm just using what's at hand. little safu. I'm adding height. I'm sitting up high, okay? Because the tighter the hip, the more height you need to engage these actions. So you could sit on a bolster. We've done this sitting on a chair. You remember sitting on a chair. All of these can be done. Now, change legs to the other leg. Just work one foot. Keep that foot as I described. You start kind of with a deep pose. Before you try to come in super close, start farther away with those feet and work much more on the rotation. Do you see how the heel is lifting? The heel has to work on lifting. Do you see how it's pushed away from the knee and lifting? That is all of those actions we discussed. Inner knee extension through the toes, strong outer calf, strong outer thigh tuck. And the groin is released, the groin is following. It's the same instructions, turned, and as far as you can go. See how my toes are turned? Yes. If it doesn't hurt the knee, you do. Come out, change sides. I don't care how high you sit. Chair, perfect. Bolster, perfect. Many blankets, perfect. Roll that thigh. Tuck the outer thigh into the hip socket. Get the outer calf. Push to the heel. Stretch from the knee to the heel. And the harder you work with the hip and the outer calf and that inner foot stretch, the harder you work, the more that heel turns up. And you can, assuming your knee is safe, bring it in. If you see what I'm doing on the floor, I'm allowing myself to roll so I can concentrate on this one leg, one hip. I'm giving support and let myself roll. Feel free. Yes, much better, Kate. Gay, sorry. Heel up, roll, work hard through that hip. Heel forward, Karen. Either Karen, but especially the one on the chair. Okay, you come out now. You got it, Gabe. That's much better. You make a signal, you feel the difference. Yeah. Okay. Is everybody all right then? Groins okay? Yes. Happy groins, tight groins. Happy groins. Okay. All right. I mean, it helps me. I'm not just it's not self-gratification here. I'm trying to get feedback so I know how to proceed. Yeah, if I'm overdoing or going to exhaustion. So look, we're going to take a peculiar Trikonasana. I'm going to show you facing the camera. Sorry, I should use a chair. Here's a brick. So watch. Here's my front foot. Here's my jacket out of the way. So I line my feet up as usual, and I'm doing everything to make sure that I'm following the rules. But watch, I'm going to bend the knee and turn the foot out and turn the heel in. Do you see how my knee is turning? Do you see how that groin went from here, turning the foot? The groin is also turning. Do you see it? I'm doing more turning with my thigh. See how much that foot is turned out. From the hip, not the knee. Watch from the side. I'll just be on the chair so you see it. I'm in Trikonasana. You see what's going on. Outer thigh tucking. This is your standard Trikonasana. Okay. Now I'm going to change it. I have to keep this tuck. Keep that outer thigh tucking. I pick up the toes and the entire outer calf, outer thigh have to turn, the knee with it. So don't be distracted here. Now that you see that happening, look at the hip. I don't know if you can see it, but it comes in. It comes in. And then I work to stretch the leg from this outer thigh. Okay? You go. I don't care how far you turn your foot out. My rotation is flexible. Don't do an angular pose. Line up your heels with each other at the outset, okay? And do ordinary Trikonasana with great attention to the foot, knee, hip. If that part does not go well, then when you do the knee bending exercise, don't turn your foot, just dig the hip in more, right? If you can't get the first pose, you do. If the first pose is limited, you bend the knee and work that without changing your foot. You bend the knee, reset, and straighten. Don't turn the foot. If it's going well, turn your foot a bit and work deeper from the hip. Take the Trikonasana you can. Okay. The point is, the knee should never bear the burden of your ambition. This is the work of the hip. All right, be careful coming out. I would bend the knee, turn the foot straight, and then come up carefully. Turn the feet, bring the feet together. Determine if you are confused or clear. And set yourself up for side two. Feet apart. Build this pose as you ordinarily would. Start from scratch. Turn that left foot from the hip socket. Use the eyes, the sense of touch to, within that leg to determine how complete this effort is. If it is insufficient, you don't get to turn your foot in the next part. You just take Trikonasana like everybody. Put your brick on. Don't turn your foot ahead of time. You have a straight left foot in the first part of the pose. And you're in Trikonasana observing if so, what went wrong. Fix it. Now, bend the knee. Those who determine it's appropriate, pick up the toes, turn the foot and shin and knee and thigh to get that foot turned out. The foot doesn't go first. The foot goes with everything. Now you establish that foot, establish the hip, establish the outer calf, and lengthen the leg. If your stance is too short, lengthen it. Walk your back foot back. Explore what's happening. Feel free to repeat the knee bend, the roll, the engagement of that outer calf, outer top calf especially, and re-straighten, come completely to straightening, tucking that thigh to the hip socket. Then turn the foot straight in order to come up. Bend the knee, turn the foot straight, come up, turn the feet, bring the feet together. That's pretty good. Now, Ardha Chandrasana. Actually, let's do something else first. I want you, I think you'll be able to do this working with a chair seat. Those who've got a bar wall or a rope wall or something very firm that you can kind of, if you could see this, hold on to and hang from, that's extra good. But a chair is going to do the job for most of us. So you're going to stretch forward, sort of half Uttanasana, and shirt tucked in. Half Uttanasana, and I'm going to make it so my hips feel like they're hanging back a bit. So I might feel like my buttocks are slightly behind my heels. So that is the initial traction. But here's where we get different. Your head will come up, the leg will come up. Now I want your leg to pull you into a traction. I want your leg to pull you away from that chair seat. Right leg first. So get into the Uttanasana first, where you feel legs straight, feet joined. You got to have enough room, Karen, behind you to stretch that leg fully, not run into a wall. You need lots of room. So with the hips level and the action of the legs established, stay with the hip back behind the hands, pull back, join your feet. Raise the right leg if you haven't already. Some of you have been up for a while with that leg up. Pull the leg back, spread your foot. Every action you have learned applies. Every last one. Spreading the foot, pushing from the knee to the inner heel. Outer calf connected to the pulling effort. Outer thigh to the hip socket, completely connected. Buttock bones to the hamstrings, to the heels. Pull through that leg. And release, come out. It should feel like a spinal relief. Stand up, give yourself a break. And then take side two. So you fold forward. Don't hang too far back, but you have to have the sense that some the gravity, the weight is going in the right direction. Now, when you're doing this, if your feet are apart, you will sway to one side. If your feet are together, you can stay centered. So the standing leg has to do the same thing that the lifting leg is doing, stretching into its inner foot, its own outer calf. Go ahead, raise the leg, lift it higher, Chaya. Lift from the thigh and extend that leg, hips level. Don't, if you touch a wall, get away from the wall and stretch further. Raise the leg higher, Suzette, and push through the big toe. Push through, yes, inner heel and big toe. So you use every available means to traction yourself and come out. So Karen, those hips need to stay level. That's hard on the right hip. That is the weakness there in that right hip.
Yes, I'm finding it particularly challenging on the standing leg not to
Yes,
spill out.
not to sway, not to spill at the hip. Correct.
Would it be beneficial for me to rotate outward a little bit?
Always this thigh bone goes back. So I'm not going to call that a rotation, but you might have to in your case. If it's forward, it's got to go to where it's correctly in the socket.
Okay.
The problem is, I think the strength is not there. And this whole class is about that strength. It's actually, it's totally about, so you just keep fighting with it and there will be a pose. This is not an easy pose for the standing, this part of the standing leg hip socket. This is the part that spreads, that sags when the bone starts, as you say, spilling. So what brings that bone in is this posterior musculature in the leg. And there are some deep buttock muscles that aren't gluteus maximus that are involved. You have 9 deep and important and shallow and important buttock muscles on each side. All we usually know about is gluteus maximus and minimus and medius, but there's more, and they have to activate to bring that and keep that bone in right between the top thigh and the pelvis. And if you make that strong effort, it pays off in less of that burny, achy pain. You just get stronger muscles.
That felt better using a little more concentration there.
Yes. This is the kind of thing where Iyengar calls a particular place, which he could be this top outer calf, top outer thigh. He says, act like, he doesn't quite say this, he says there is a brain there. There is an intelligence there. And you have to wake it up, right? It's sleeping, right? Wake it up. All right. One more standing pose. Now I'm going to keep it easy. I could make it hard, but I'll keep it easy. Here's, you can work with a chair, sorry, or just a brick. I'm indecisive. Use the props that suit you, it is Ardha Chandrasana. And we're going from Trikonasana. And I myself am using a wall because it's always an issue with balance poses. Some of you working with injuries, anybody working with organic conditions, you might say, that are uncomfortable organically. So we're playing this straight. Activate the legs as we know. Inner foot, outer calf, spread of the foot, outer thigh and the hip socket, groins long. From that right top thigh, turn. Right top thigh, turn. Don't overturn. Spread the arms, bend from the hip, and keep that outer thigh tucking. Keep that inner knee pushing to the big toe, outer calf coming in, and you take your Trikonasana. The hand goes to the hip, and when you bend your knee to shift toward Ardha Chandrasana, and I have to step my foot back for this, excuse me, you don't. When you step, you keep that knee back, you keep the hip and calf and inner foot in place. And when you step up, brick goes forward. Never give up that outer calf, outer thigh, inner leg. The top leg comes up and get it back. Inner foot, outer calf, outer thigh. Pull yourself back. Pull so that this thigh goes back, this top thigh goes back. Standing leg thigh goes back. Raise the top arm. Then hand to the hip or stretching back. Bend your knee correctly. Properly stretch your back leg back. Take Trikonasana and come up. Turn the feet. Okay, side two. Set yourself up in such a way that you don't have to do what I did and shift your foot back to make room for yourself. Give yourself enough room. So don't let your head wind up in the fireplace or the flower pot or the door. Keeping those feet parallel from the top left thigh, you turn, top left thigh. If you're at the wall, that foot is a bit away from the wall. In theory, the heels are lined up. Take Trikonasana without losing right or left leg, especially feet and calves. Keep raising that outer right thigh to the hip socket. Now you ready? Top hand to the hip. Bend your front knee. Maintain the actions. Don't let the outer calf or the outer hip go. Reach your brick forward. Step forward, come up, maintaining the actions. As soon as you can, get that right foot in play, the lifted leg, push through the inner heel. Don't drop your toes or the sole of the foot to the floor. Push that inner heel away from you. Outer calf in, Suzette. Big toe away. Big toe away, foot parallel to the floor. Your toes are turning toward the floor. Yeah, turn them perpendicular to the wall, parallel to the floor. Center heel on the wall. Raise your leg, Marcia. Now and traction yourself, both legs, from the hip sockets. And then bend your knee. That looks good, gay. That looks long and straight. Step back. Keep the action in the hips as you stand up. Don't let the knee roll. And turn your feet, bring your feet together. Now, just take, are you okay? All right. Take Prasarita Padottanasana. Prasarita means legs apart. Padottanasana, forward bent. Now, it looks like everything is rolling internally in the thigh. It might feel like that as the buttocks and back thighs broaden. They do indeed broaden, but this outer thigh bone stays up in the hip socket, and Karen and everybody else, it's going back. It's going back. It's in that traction the spine mode. Move that top outer thigh back. Even as the buttock bones and groins broaden and abdomen broadens. Let the pelvis be soft and inwardly releasing as you exhale, and let your head come down. As far down as it will go. Keep the legs going back, heels down, outer calves active, groin soft. Inner knees supported by their activity. Head hanging. In theory, it touches something, but I'm not, if you don't have an easy prop in place, just be there. Let your head hang. And don't put too much height under the head. Study much more the release of the groins. Don't let your hips roll forward. Keep them back. Keep them back over the heels. Soft breath, soft throat, soft abdomen. Let the pose breathe across your back. Laterally breathe. Keep this lateral breath. Do not let your head rise from where it is placed. Only lift the shoulder blades away from the floor. That's it. Leave your head exactly where it is and raise those shoulder sockets, shoulder blades. Continue breathing laterally. Sides of the neck soft. Sides of the skull soft. Now, time to come up. Straighten the arms. If your buttocks are touching the wall, you need to come away from the wall so you have an easy time standing up. If your buttocks are away from the wall, you're fine. If necessary, move your feet together. If possible, use that strength of the legs, as we have discussed, to inhale and come up. Good. Bring the feet together. Now, let's have fun. Get a brick or a suitable pile of blankets, something stacked high enough that you'll be comfortable sitting on it. And we're going to try, oh, and I suspect you'll want a strap. Possibly two, if you've got them. You never know. Now, people like me, at my advanced age, and with all these various occupations I've had, have led me to a little bit of knee problems. So I use a knee rope, and I blame it on age, but it's also, it's just, it is. So what we're gonna do is sit with one knee in Virasana. So I'm on the narrow edge, narrow side of a folded blanket, and it lets me sit so my foot is not pushed around by the blankets. And I don't have a big operation changing sides. You're seated high enough that your hip sockets can, with work, arrive at level. Now, one leg is deeply folded, but the original actions remain. Reach from the inner knee to the big toe. Compact the outer calf in. This is the same. The outer thigh goes to the hip socket. This is the same. The hip socket and the buttock muscle lengthens so that hip socket sits down. Same. Same in this leg. Inner leg, spread the foot, outer calf, outer thigh, compacting, being seated. Same. Same action. Turn the leg, turn the foot, keep the outer calf, keep the outer thigh, keep the stretch of the inner leg. Come into that Mula Bandhasana that we did earlier. Heel up, toes down. Tilt, if necessary, to put the knee down. This hip up, if necessary, to put that knee down. Heel up, heel forward. Try to roll that heel. I'm not kidding. Try to roll this heel toward the floor. This is the only way I can do it, but that's how far you can. I'm not saying change your buttock position. I'm saying move that calf. Okay? Everything okay? Watch. Watch. If your heel is up and it's about as high as that thigh, just pick your toes up and relax. Now, this is sort of a loose version, and that's fine. Okay, those who can't quite get up as high as that thigh, if that's not happening, you certainly have the option of just putting your foot on a different support that's a little bit lower. Make it comfy. Foam brick, rolled blanket, cork brick, something. It's not going to beat up your ankle. Okay, is that okay, Karen? It's happy. It's happy. Sit the hip, good, excellent. Now, change sides. This is plenty for a first try. Know your props that you might need for side 2. I'm shifting my hips a little bit so I have an easier time in the left leg virasana and the blanket doesn't get my way. Now, pick up those leg actions. It should result, by the way, in this virasana leg. If you see this foot, when I pick up the actions, that foot, when I pick up the actions, it goes from a neutral foot to an awake foot, from a neutral foot to an awake foot, with those 5 toes reaching back. Okay, so your foot has to be activated. Likewise, this one. Then it turns from the hip. From the hip, you have the open knee bend, open angle of the knee. So everybody has a chance to get their ducks in a row, and you have your extra props, protectors. And this actually helps me because even though my complaint is in the knee, the root of it is in the hip. So this kind of helps me get this groin to open. Heel comes up and the foot comes in as the whole leg participates. And you can see I'm more tippy tilty in this pose because this side doesn't work as well. But I fight with it.
What if it hurts toes?
I
got arthritis in my toes, and it's
well, osteoarthritis or rheumatoid.
Osteo.
Then, as much as you can tolerate, you should. However, for the parts you cannot tolerate, you need to build a support. Watch, here's a little something that I'm raising the base joint up on so it doesn't, it's got a ground, but it's not as big a bend. Rolled something firm, but not too high. Something can be invented easily, but take what you can. And if it just is utterly intolerable, you must, we have clever little rollings of yoga straps to build exactly things like this for the big toe to, got it? It's good. All right. Yeah, that's the ticket. And then see those who can, if you can come into this half lotus. And if you can't, you come to that brick support and sit up tall and seek to find these leg actions. Do you see this foot sickling up? This foot is clearly not doing what the original actions are. It's no longer doing this. And I'll tell you, it's because it's just takes time for this hip to open. Now I'm getting it. Do you see I'm making a little more compact pose and I can stretch that inner calf now. Okay. Now, some of you may need to shift support to the knee. All right, come out. Now we get to do the twist that goes with this. You've learned, I hope, that you might need knee support, you might need foot support. I'll show. This is Bharadvajasana 2. Same start. Same start, same start, same start, same continuation, same continuation, same gathering of props as needed. Now, if you're going for the full pose, go for a compact, complete pose that lets this big toe come to your side. If it's over here, it's harder to do the next part of the pose. So if possible, bring it in. If it's part way there, fine. But if it's really far away and there's vulnerability in the joints, you need to do the prior pose and just tuck your foot underneath the ankle, Bharadvajasana 1. It's protect your knees, okay? So you've got what you've got. This hand goes, Padmasana arm goes super up, hip down, then it goes behind you and you turn. And to help this leg bracing, help it stay in place bracing, reach through these toes. Now, this back hand is going to slide around, not swing, slide around to catch your big toe. If it can't catch the big toe, you wrap a strap around your toes and catch the strap as close as you can. Your first job is to organize the legs and the hips. Your second job is to take the twist. When you take the twist, breathe and spread laterally. Make sure that there is space to breathe on both sides of the abdomen. The twist frequently shuts the breath off on one side. It always shifts the breath around, but just make sure close in to that spine, you've got breath on both sides. If not, right out to the skin. Come out. Act like your arms are a spatula and offload your Padmasana leg before you work to stretch it straight. Then Virasana leg stretches straight. You go back to Dandasana and make sure your knees are clear before side 2. Hips level. Sometimes people need different heights under the hips on one side and the other because the hips are so different or the knees are so different. Point that knee straight forward, spread those toes behind you, outer calf active, inner calf lengthening, outer thigh to the hip and the buttock down. Same in the straight leg. Then you roll. From those actions, you roll. From those actions, you go toward Mula Bandhasana. So you are really tucking that thigh toward its hip socket. Do your best, and then take the pose that works for you. If it's back to Bharadvajasana 1, I should say, I'm going to do 2, but I'll show you a lovely thing that can happen in one that's very similar. Instead of catching this Padmasana foot with your hand as we do in the classical pose. If you're in Bharadvajasana 1 and this knee and hip aren't cooperating for 2, reach around and catch your big toe of the Virasana foot, and you get a similar anchoring inside your own body. That anchoring comes. So in either pose, you can bind, you might say to yourself, there should be no knee pain at any stage of this pose. If when you go deeper into the twist, you start tweaking the knee or the hip, you have to come out of the pose because clearly something's wrong. You have to come out of that aspect of the pose anyway. Catch the big toe of the Virasana foot and pull. If you could reach all the way up to the foot, catch the whole bottom of the foot, that'd be lovely. The better the ground, the better. Come out. Good. Offload that Padmasana leg carefully. Protect the knee as you stretch it out. Likewise, Virasana. 2 legs, Dandasana. Now you could be seated on blankets or just on the floor. Give yourself a few minutes to completely open those knees. So what happens to me after I fold it up a lot is the leg comes out and it's fine, but if I give it a few seconds, I can usually get my heels another ½ inch away. Something lets go and I can get more extension. So you need to go through that initial phase, right? And get where that back knee finishes. And if you have knee problems, it might take a while. You should give yourself that time in your own practice. And in class, you take steps that you don't aggravate because there's not always time to really work closely on problem areas. Now, you need a bolster or a pile of blankets equivalent to a bolster. And you need some blankets folded however you like. I'm triple folding them so I get some height. If you had a second bolster, you'd use that. You know, one-stop shopping instead of 2 or 3 is always good. Now I've got 1 extra blanket, and it's going to keep my head off the sticky mat. That's all. And I'm going to take Setu Banta. Here's a belt. Belt's optional, but we've been doing lots of hip and leg work. So I'll say it's recommended. Tighten this belt so it's a little bit wider than your hip width. Not as wide as your bolster blankets. And you start just putting it around your feet so it's there in advance. Now, I lie down on the bolster full length and I make sure my shirt collar is well forward. Then I coil over that top bolster. My shoulders do not have to ground on the floor, but they have to hang to the floor. This top sternum should feel like it drops toward the floor. Pit of the throat drops toward the floor. Once you feel like that's happening comfortably, and this top sternum, or it's the bottom of the sternum now, becomes elevated. Ooh, kitty. Then you can stretch your legs. And as you see, I've miscalculated. So I'm pushing those blankets out so they are under my heels. So I'm coming out. Shoulders close to the floor. Now, the blanket, everybody's bolster height varies. Everybody's spine shape varies. So it is quite possible that some of you feel uncomfortable. Something's gotten a little too pushed. So many things can happen. I see one of you, and it is fine to make the blanket under your head a different shape. Some of you might raise the blanket under your feet, not now, but I'm saying there's options. There's so many options for varying this. Pit of the throat, subsiding, dropping, hanging, deepening. The sides of the rib cage, from the armpits, lifting. The spine is long and quiet on that blanket. It's not trying to help make the shape. Blanket or bolsters. Let it relax along that shape. Now, the leg work, there's a memory of it here. Some of you, I see, are remembering it by activating the muscles. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, it could be a really helpful thing to help set muscles, joints, and breath. Let your brain cells settle from the forehead frontal lobes. Let everything that's heavy in that brain just settle toward gravity, toward the back brain. Let the middle brain also settle toward the back brain. The front brain is the seat of analytical thinking, decision-making thinking, planning thinking, future thinking. Let that front brain stop thinking. The middle brain stores memory. The past. Let that middle brain become quiet. The back brain is where we experience the present moment. Heartbeat, breath, sensation. Your direct experience. It's your middle brain that compares your present experience to your past and incorporates it. It's your frontal brain that decides what you're experiencing and how you ought to, but in combination with memory, how you need to respond. Right now, don't need to respond, just experience. No deciding. Now, it is time to come out, or at least it's time for me to end class. You may come out of this pose and lie with your spine on the floor, flat. So even if I end this meeting formally, your assignment for the next 2-3 minutes is to lie flat. The legs can be propped up on a bolster, but the spine should be flat. The legs can be crossed swastikasana style or straight. Be comfortable. This is Shavasana for you. Now, I will join my palms and say Namaskar to everybody. See you next time.